Wrath and Glory by Cubicle 7 is one of two currently active tabletop RPGs set in the Warhammer 40k setting, and the TLDR is you really only need the core rulebook to play. You can get a lot out of it despite it being pretty light on the threats and monsters, but really more than enough to get you started, and you should probably also get the Forsaken System Player's Guide, which contains a lot of expanded character options and lots of lore that you can use. So there are currently two tabletop RPGs set in the 40k universe that are active and get content released for: Wrath and Glory and Imperium Maledictum, both made by the same company. Wrath and Glory is more of a crazy action, high drama kind of game where if you play a Battle Sister or Tech Adept or Skitarii or even a Space Marine, you are the most badass of that archetype. This is the game for, taking down 10 cultists with a hail of bolter rounds and jumping off your Valkyrie weapons platform onto a tank while also trying to wrestle a tyrannid monster. Imperium Maledictum is more on the street level of 40k, where you can play an actual person living in the setting, trying to survive. You're still connected to big things that are happening through your patron, but this is a more subtle, deadly game. If someone shoots you with a bolt pistol, best case scenario, you lose an arm or something. And I'll make another video comparing the game so you can decide which one you want to play. I do just want to note that if you like one, it doesn't mean you have to hate the other. Emperor protect us, you can even like both. I love Wrath and Glory. I played it a whole bunch, and I read through the rules for Imperium Maledictum, and it seems pretty cool to me too. Like with anything, if you go to certain places online, you'll see that a lot of people seem to feel that if they like one of the games, they have to hate the other ones because, it does some things differently. These are two very different games that do different things. They share a setting. They have vastly different takes on what it means to be a character in the 40k setting. But both of these are very well thought out games. I played Wrath and Glory more. I absolutely love this game. I'll probably have some fun with Imperium Maledictum too. Anyway, this video is about Wrath and Glory. So the first book you need for Wrath and Glory is, of course, the core rulebook. This is one of the best looking books that I own. Random page here. Look how beautiful this art is. There are also PDF and Foundry VTT versions of it. This book covers how to play the game. It has a bunch of archetypes you can choose for your players. These are basically your classes, and it includes tons of equipment and talents and psychic powers. It also has a pretty great lore section, and this is meant to be friendly to newcomers to 40k, which I know annoys some people on Reddit. But 40k is a really hard setting to get into. There's just so much of it. Many of us have been reading these books and playing these games for years and years and years, and you kind of accumulate the experience of 40k, and you almost build your own version of 40k in your head, much like Forgotten Realms or any other massive setting. My interpretation of it is probably a bit different than yours. So what Cubicle 7 did here is come up with an isolated star system. There's an in-lore reason for why it would be isolated, but it is. And in this isolated system called Gilead, they can explore different factions and concepts on a smaller scale, which makes it easier to follow if you're new and immediately familiar if you already know the setting. And it also provides a solid sandbox for you to play with. This doesn't go into detail of specific maps for each region and every planet, but personally I like that. It's inspiration and hooks you could use to do cool stuff in your games. You of course don't have to use Gilead as your setting, but it gives you a lot to play with, and you could also easily lift some of these things into other settings. The book also includes a Game Master section, which has some great advice. If you've already run a bunch of games and other systems, you'll be familiar with almost all of it. And finally, there's a Bestiary. It doesn't have a ton of stuff, definitely enough to get you started. It does have a lot of variations on things that you can use. Many of these threats will have like different versions. Like if you're using a cultist or Imperial Guard, they would have options on how to change them a little bit, make a leader, make a mob that has different weapons. I was able to get a lot of mileage out of just the monsters in the core book, but I definitely wanted more monsters after I ran a bunch of games. It is cool that they at least give you a few monsters from every faction. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stuff in here, but it's nothing like, a fully fledged bestiary. The Forsaken System Player's Guide is the essential supplement for this game. This is the main expansion of rules that you would need to create more types of characters. It has about 20 additional archetypes, more races, more information you can use to create backgrounds for your characters. It has a new system that you can use called endeavors for what your characters might do in the downtime. And also it has a lot of new lore about the Gilead system and specifically the patrons you can use to kick off your games. This also has a pretty great Foundry VTT version, although I do find it a little frustrating that you don't get the PDF when you buy the Foundry version of any of these books. You do get it when you get the physical copy, which is great, but usually you get the Foundry version for the options and monsters for your virtual tabletop. It's not a convenient place to sit down and read. So it would be nice to also get the PDF if you get that version as well. One criticism that I saw about this book specifically is that about 50% of it is lore. So if you're not setting your game in the Gilead system, 50% of this book is useless. I disagree with this completely because I think that the way they laid out the lore in this book is meant to be useful, right? So the patrons, the places, the adventure hooks, all of these things are useful. They're not just fluff. They are fluff, but it's useful fluff, So you can very easily lift any of these things and put them in your game, even if you're setting it in a different area of the galaxy. For example, in my game, I do use the Gilead system, but I didn't have it, cut off from the Imperium. So I do have influences from other places in the Imperium. I just lifted the Gilead system and I put it on the other side of the Great Rift. If you do feel like you don't need any lore support or inspiration, then yes, about half this book you're not going to be interested in. You're still going to probably want the character options, but you probably like 40K and you'll think it's cool. For the first game I ran, I limited the rules to just the core rulebook and it was great, but the Forsaken System Player's Guide definitely enriched our game when it came to character creation. Again, this is the core supplement for the game. All the other books are focused on just one thing and would only be relevant if you include that thing in your game, except for maybe the most recent product, Threat Assessment Xenos. This book is a bestiary, and specifically it contains Xeno threats: Eldari, Drukhari, Necrons, Orcs, Genestealers, Tau. You'll find them all in this book with lore, with adventure hooks. You will not find any Chaos Cultists or rogue human factions here, and I like this book a lot. Bestiaries, in my mind, are some of the best sources of inspiration when thinking about a new game. If the art is evocative and you have good info about how these threats and monsters would behave and what they could possibly want, there could be endless adventures in there, and I feel this book delivers on all of it. I wouldn't call it a must-have. This is a new book as of making this video, so I played a ton of games without it, but it opened up a lot of possibilities for me. Like, reading through this book gave me a lot of ideas that I'm absolutely going to use in my games. It also has a pretty cool section about battle zones, which includes these D100 tables to randomize things that could happen in each battle zone. It's a cool book. Lots of things for your players to fight. Church of Steel is a book about machines and specifically vehicles you can use in your game. It contains lore about how each faction thinks about machines and rules for using vehicles in your game, as well as profiles for lots of vehicles. This is probably my least favorite Wrath and Glory book. Not to say it's not good, there's plenty of really useful stuff in there, specifically all of the travel mechanisms, but while the lore in the other books is very specifically there to inspire gameplay, here it feels a bit like filler. I almost would have liked it better if this book was just straight up vehicle rules and profiles and that's it. The travel rules in this book are pretty cool. I've used them a lot. And you also get, these random tables for things that could happen during travel. I've used them. I've had a good time with them. The vehicle profiles in this book are a little frustrating. They list the name of a weapon that the vehicle has, but not the stats for it. So you either have to go look it up in the tables at the end of the book, or it could be a weapon from the core book. I just wish that they would do the same thing they do with monster profiles, where you have everything you need in one place, and it specifically tells you when you can use, this weapon or this weapon, but not both. I got this book in a bundle. I don't know if I would get it standalone. If I'll ever see the hardcover version of it on sale, I'll probably still get it, but that's just because I'm addicted to hardcovers and to 40K stuff. And Cubicle 7, even when they make a bad book, it's still a very good looking book. Redacted Records is a book about space hulks, and it is great. This is a nice short book. It's about 80 pages long, and it gives you information about space hulks in the Gilead system. It has a space hulk generator. It has events that could happen in a space hulk. It has quite a few threats that you could use in there. This book does reference the core book and the Forsaken System Player's Guide quite a bit, but let's be honest, if you bought this one, you most likely have those other ones as well. This book also has suggested frameworks for Space Hulk themed games. It has various cults that could be active in the system. You could skim this book in an evening and come up with a ton of ideas for a Space Hulk adventure and have everything you could possibly need to run it. This book, of course, is only relevant if you're planning to run a Space Hulk adventure, but if you are, this is a solid buy. I'm very happy I got this book. There are quite a few smaller PDFs out there for published adventures. Some of them are even free. I haven't run most of them, so you can take a look at them at the Cubicle 7 website and see if anything catches your eye. What I do have some experience with is Litanies of the Lost, which is a collection of 4 adventures, each of which can span multiple sessions easily. Most of these are tier 1 and tier 2 adventures, and I think they're fine. I really enjoyed reading through the book. I got some inspiration. I don't really run adventures by the book. I did that once, and since then, that was in D&D. I improvise mostly. I tend to improvise a lot, but there's definitely a lot of inspiration here. And if you do like to follow a path, at least for your first few games, I do think that these are very well structured and give you a lot of information to work with, including all the threat profiles you might need. There's also the Wrath and Glory starter set, which as of making this video is only available in PDF and I think also for Foundry. It includes a 48-page adventure and more details on the setting, some basic rules, but not, like the full book, and some pre-generated characters. Probably enough to get you started. When physical copies of this come out later this year, I'll probably pick it up because it also should have tokens for you to track wrath points and glory points with, and a quick reference guide, and special dice, and I just love those sorts of things. The last product I want to mention is the GM screen because it is very, very good. First of all, it's beautiful, but it's also super useful. And the little booklet that comes with it, I've ended up using this more than some of the bigger books. It has a few of these like little adventures with hooks and threats and everything you need. And I like these better than the full-fledged adventures because sometimes I just need something to get me going quickly. And also there's a profile for a Word Bearer's Chaos Terminator in there. It's awesome. That's going to be it for now. I'm sure there's more stuff, but these are the Wrath and Glory products that I have some experience with. Let me know what you end up playing with, and that's it. Go play a game.